The hospital waiting room felt colder than winter, even though the heater hummed softly. Ethan Miller sat hunched forward on a metal chair, fingers laced, eyes locked on the hallway where his wife, Lena, was undergoing her ultrasound. After 3 painful years of infertility, treatments, tears, sleepless nights, today was supposed to be their miracle. His heart beat fast not from fear, but hope. He imagined the moment they would finally hear a heartbeat, the moment they could call their families and say it's happening. We're finally going to be parents. When the nurse stepped out and called his name, Ethan stood instantly, smiling, feeling alive again for the first time in months. He walked toward the ultrasound room, almost floating, unaware that the happiness he waited 3 years for was about to shatter in seconds. The smile on Ethan's face froze when he stepped inside the ultrasound room. The doctor didn't greet him. Instead, she stood stiff, pale, eyes flickering nervously toward the technician, who avoided eye contact and pretended to focus on the screen. Ethan's confusion deepened as the doctor hesitated, lips trembling, before finally asking him to step into the hallway for a private conversation. Once the door closed, her voice cracked, barely audible. She explained that the fetus had a genetic marker that made it biologically impossible for Ethan to be the father. Ethan blinked rapidly, convinced she had mixed up files. But the doctor insisted, no mistake. Then, with fear in her eyes, she whispered, "Divorce your wife. Whatever she's hiding, protect yourself." His mind went silent. No anger yet, just shock, like a world collapsing without. So Ethan walked back into the ultrasound room on autopilot, barely feeling his legs. Lena was smiling brightly, holding her phone up, recording herself, excitedly talking about nursery plans and baby names, as if nothing were wrong. She didn't notice the emotional storm in Ethan's eyes, or she pretended not to. She kissed the screen of her phone for the camera and called Ethan the best husband in the world, performing happiness for strangers online instead of her own husband. Ethan didn't say a word. He didn't yell. He didn't ask questions. Something inside him had gone quiet, a silence deeper than rage. Without even glancing back, he turned and walked out of the hospital into the cold night. The door slid shut behind him, and that was it. He never returned to that room. He never returned home to UND. Ethan and Lena's story began like a fairy tale. 2 opposite worlds colliding at college. Lena was ambitious, popular, driven by status and achievement, while Ethan was a quiet, humble mechanic who believed happiness came from simplicity. She adored how grounded he was, how he listened instead of competing. They married young with dreams of building a small but loving family. Ethan opened a modest auto shop and poured himself into it, proud of honest work. Lena rose quickly in her marketing career, earning a high salary, becoming more image-focused as she spent time around corporate elites. Slowly, the differences that once attracted them began to create distance. She wanted a lifestyle that matched her colleagues, vacations, designer clothes, expensive dinners, while Ethan only wanted peace and sincerity. But he kept trying, believing love was enough to fill the gaps as the years passed. Pressure crept into their marriage like a slow leak. Lena began comparing their lives to others, co-workers buying homes, driving luxury cars, posting glamorous vacations online. She complained about finances, about how Ethan wasn't dreaming big enough, even though he worked twice as hard as most people. Determined not to lose her, Ethan pushed himself into double shifts, sacrificing sleep, weekends, and his own dreams just to keep up with her expectations. Meanwhile, Lena started coming home late, always talking about overtime, expensive clothes, new perfume, and perfectly done makeup even on weekdays. Ethan never questioned her because he trusted her completely, telling himself she was just tired from the high-pressure job. Little did he know that the distance growing between them wasn't temporary. It was the beginning of something he was blind to. Their journey to become parents turned from hope to heartbreak. Month after month, negative pregnancy tests filled their bathroom trash can. Intimacy transformed from affection into pressure. Calendars, schedules, alarms. Ethan blamed himself, convinced he was failing her as a man. He prayed every night for a miracle, while Lena grew more distant, as if she had already emotionally left the marriage. When the pregnancy test finally turned positive, Ethan felt reborn. He thought every sacrifice had paid off and that the baby was proof their love had survived. He didn't notice the guilt in Lena's eyes, the way she avoided his touch, the way she flinched whenever he talked about the future. Ethan believed the pregnancy saved their marriage. What he didn't know was that Lena wasn't celebrating. She was terrified of the truth that was coming. Ethan didn't drive home after leaving the hospital. He drove without direction until he found a cheap roadside motel and checked in under silence. The room smelled of cigarette smoke and loneliness, but it was the only place where he didn't have to pretend. His phone vibrated constantly. 12 missed calls, then 24, then 38. Lena's voice messages came like storms. First crying, then pleading, then pretending to be confused, then raging, then apologizing, then filming herself again talking about their perfect baby news as if nothing was happening. She called him a coward, a monster, and then the love of her life, all within an hour. Ethan didn't reply once, not because he didn't care, but because he needed facts, not emotions. He didn't trust himself to speak, not until he understood the truth buried beneath the performance. The next morning, with barely any sleep, Ethan called the doctor again. His voice was calm, almost too calm, the voice of someone holding himself together by threads. The doctor hesitated, clearly uncomfortable, clearly afraid of the consequences of speaking too openly. But Ethan begged for clarity, not anger, just honesty. Finally, the doctor explained the genetic markers again. The fetus could not be his with an extremely high statistical certainty. No lab mix-up, no wrong file. Then the doctor confessed what he had not been allowed to say out loud in the hospital. Cases like this usually involve coercion, emotional manipulation, or situations where the woman hides the identity of the real father, protects someone else, or protect herself. The memory of similar cases had frightened him, and that was why he told Ethan to run, not confront. Still numb, Ethan drove to his best friend Caleb's house, someone who had known both him and Lena since college. The moment Caleb saw Ethan's face, he didn't ask to sin. He just let him inside. When Ethan finally explained, Caleb didn't look surprised. Instead, he sighed heavily and said the words Ethan had been trying to avoid for months. "She's been cheating, man. You just didn't want to see it." Caleb reminded him of every red flag. The sudden overtime, the expensive gifts to herself, the canceled date nights, the new perfume she never wore home. Ethan didn't want to believe it until he checked their home security logs through an app on his phone. Week after week, the cameras were manually disabled on the nights Lena came home late. The truth hit him like a finishing blow. The doctor didn't destroy their marriage. Lena already had. Ethan moved to the next days like a ghost, silent, focused, broken but calculating. Instead of running back to Lena or exploding in anger, he met privately with a family lawyer, sitting stiffly in a polished office that smelled of paperwork and ruined dreams. The lawyer listened carefully, then explained something Ethan had never imagined. If he stayed with Lena through birth, he could legally be listed as a father, meaning 18 years of child support for a baby that wasn't his. Love won't protect you in court. Proof will, the lawyer warned. It wasn't just betrayal anymore. It was a trap. Ethan realized this wasn't a heartbreak. It was a plan designed to financially and emotionally imprison him. He walked out of the office with shaking hands, realizing the next decision he made would determine the rest of his life. While Ethan moved quietly in the shadows, Lena moved loudly in the spotlight. She didn't call police or file missing person reports. She crafted a polished image online, pictures of her holding her belly, smiling, claiming Ethan was the best husband, so supportive, and already an amazing father. Thousands of likes, overflowing comments. You're lucky to have him. True love, marriage goals. Behind the screen, she told her family a different story. That Ethan abandoned her on the happiest day of their lives, that he was heartless and irresponsible. His phone lit up with messages from her parents and siblings, calling him selfish, evil, disgusting. The world saw Lena as a glowing wife. Her family saw Ethan as a villain. Not a single person saw the truth. It was the first time Ethan understood. Lena wasn't losing control. She was controlling the narrative. Late one night, Ethan returned home quietly, not to reconcile, but to collect some clothes before cutting all ties. The house felt foreign, staged, lifeless. He paused when he heard Lena's voice from the living room, laughing on the phone, not sad, not broken, but smug. Her words carved through him. No, he won't leave. I'll make him believe it's his. Once the baby arrives, he'll be trapped for life. Ethan froze, breath gone, pulse silent. Then a man's voice, confident and entitled, replied, "Good. He pays the bills, we get the life." In that moment, Ethan's heart didn't just break. It collapsed. He didn't confront them. He didn't shout. He didn't expose himself. He grabbed his bag and walked out quietly, leaving the door unlocked behind him. He finally knew the whole truth, but now he had the patience of someone planning war. Ethan didn't rush into revenge. He planned it with precision and silence. Every day of heartbreak became fuel for his clarity. He moved their joint savings into a legally protected personal account under the guidance of his lawyer, making sure not a single transaction seemed emotional or reckless. The lawyer filed a pre-birth paternity challenge, something Lena would never expect, ensuring Ethan could never be held responsible for the child financially or legally. Divorce papers were drafted and ready, not impulsive, not angry, but airtight and final. Meanwhile, Lena posted nonstop online, convinced he would come crawling back. She polished her image, rehearsed tearful apologies on camera, and organized a big live stream celebration, expecting to trap him into admitting fatherhood publicly. She truly believed Ethan's love made him predictable. She never understood that something had changed. He had stopped loving her more than himself. The live stream began like a performance, Lena glowing with fake innocence, balloons behind her, guests cheering in comments, confetti ready. She called Ethan on speaker, expecting him to enter sobbing, begging to come home. Instead, he walked through the front door mid-broadcast with the calmness of a man who had nothing left to fear. The chat went silent. Lena froze, still smiling for the camera, unsure how to shift her expression. Without raising his voice or showing rage, Ethan placed the divorce papers in her hand and said clearly for the world to hear, "Your pregnancy is not mine, and someday the truth will eat you alive." Gasps flooded the livestream chat. The man she was hiding burst into the room, screaming, trying to fight Ethan, but Ethan didn't even lift his hands. He simply looked at him, not defeated, not angry, just done. Ethan walked toward the door without looking back, even as chaos erupted behind him. The biological father kept shouting, cornered and furious, now realizing the world knew he was a secret. The live stream chat exploded with accusations and disbelief. Commenters turning on Lena, the same stranger she spent months trying to impress. To save face, she dropped to her knees, ignoring the camera and the screaming man behind her, begging Ethan to stay. Her voice shook, raw panic replacing her polished persona. "Ethan, we can fix this. Please don't leave me. I need you. Don't do this." Ethan stopped only once, blinking back tears that he refused to let fall. In a voice calm but broken, he answered, "I try to love you more than I love myself, and that was my worst mistake." He walked out. The door closed. Their marriage ended in front of the world. Months passed, and Ethan's life didn't magically heal. It rebuilt piece by piece. He poured his pain into purpose and expanded his auto shop into a larger garage, this time with Caleb as his business partner, instead of trying to shoulder everything alone. The new space buzzed with energy, laughter, and honest work, a stark contrast to the suffocation he once lived with. Therapy became part of his weekly routine, not because he was weak, but because he finally understood he didn't have to carry everything in silence. He learned that love without self-respect is self-destruction, and loyalty shouldn't require abandoning yourself. For the first time in years, Ethan woke up without anxiety or fear. Not every day was perfect, but every day was his, and that made it enough. His life didn't return to what it used to be. It grew into something better. While Ethan rebuilt, Lena unraveled. The biological father disappeared the moment responsibility replaced excitement, leaving her alone with the consequences she thought she could manipulate others into carrying. Her scandal spread through her workplace, not because Ethan exposed her, but because live stream footage leaked and spread through the internet. The company distanced itself immediately, and she was quietly fired. Her parents, once her safety net, withdrew after learning the full truth, embarrassed and disappointed. She gave birth in a hospital room without friends, family, or cameras. The image she worked so hard to fabricate crumbled completely. There were no congratulatory live streams, no celebrations, no admirers. For the first time in her adult life, there was no audience, only silence and accountability. Lena sent message after message in the months that followed. First, she apologized. Then she justified. Then she begged. Then she asked for help, emotional, financial, parental. Each message grew longer, more desperate, more fragile. And Ethan read them all, but never replied to a single one. His silence wasn't revenge. It was peace. He no longer needed to prove anything, fix anything, or rescue someone who had destroyed him. He no longer lived in reaction to her. He lived for himself. Standing in his new shop one evening, Caleb asked him quietly if he ever missed her. Ethan thought for a moment and answered with honesty. No, I missed the man I was before her, and I'm finally becoming him again. His life was no longer driven by anger or heartbreak. It was driven by self-respect, and that was his true victory. The morning was unusually peaceful. No noise, no rush, no tension in the air. Ethan stood at the entrance of his new auto shop, sipping coffee while sunlight spilled through the wide garage door. The world felt different now, slower and lighter. When a familiar face walked in carrying a service ticket, Ethan blinked in surprise. It was the ultrasound doctor. For a second, both men froze, memories of the hospital rushing back. The doctor didn't speak immediately. Instead, he looked at Ethan with a quiet recognition of someone who had seen pain up close. He approached and gently said, "You probably don't remember me, but I'm glad you walked away. Most men don't." There was no pity in his voice, only respect. That moment wasn't about the past. It was about the person Ethan had become since then. Ethan didn't respond immediately. He wiped the grease from his hands, inhaled deeply, and looked around his shop. The clean floors, the laughter of Caleb in the background, the steady hum of tools, the environment he built from the rubble of his old life. Then he turned back to the doctor with calm eyes. "I didn't leave because of what happened," he said slowly, making sure every word came from truth and not bitterness. "I left because she never deserved the man I was willing to be." The doctor nodded, not in agreement, but in understanding. It wasn't just a medical revelation that had broken Ethan's marriage. It was a realization that love only ruins you when it becomes one-sided. Ethan had spent years trying to prove he was enough, only to learn he already was. He just gave it to the wrong person. They shook hands respectfully, and the doctor left, but Ethan stayed there for a moment, watching the sun warm the concrete outside. For years, he had waited for closure, proof, apology, justice, something to make the suffering feel meaningful. Instead, what healed him was a simple act of choosing himself. He didn't need revenge or validation or an audience. He just needed peace, and he had finally built it with his own hands. Caleb called his name from across the shop, joking about lunch, and Ethan smiled, a real smile, unforced and unbroken, the kind he hadn't felt since before pain took over his life. The camera would fade there, on a man who didn't win by destroying someone else, but by